Hey guys, Brandon with Flyin Miata back for another FM Live. Today we're going to talk about hot stuff. So, or more specifically, how to keep the hot stuff where it should be and not in your area. So we have today the NC Transmission Tunnel Heat Shield from our friends over at DEI. So this kit is CNC cut, as you can see, and this is CNC cut so that it can conform, or these wedge cuts or pie cuts are there so it can conform to the underside of the car. And I'll go into the technical specs in a sec here, but why do you need this? So you need this because transmission, exhaust, air from the engine and from the heat exchangers and everything is hot. And that's kind of the way internal combustion works, but we don't want that inside the cabin. Mazda knew this, so there is already a heat shield on your car. This is a much higher quality material, good for higher temperatures, and should do a much better job of insulating the interior. Also, it's still in one piece, or intentionally in multiple pieces. The stock stuff has a tendency to just kind of fall apart, which I'll show you in just a second here. So this kit, CNC cut, and it actually has adhesive on the back side of it. So install is pretty easy. You're going to take the old stuff out. You're going to thoroughly clean the underside of the car where this goes, and then you're going to stick this into place. It has really strong adhesive on there, so you want to be careful with it when you install it. Some of these panels are above the transmission, so they can be a little awkward to get to. So if you have your transmission out for other reasons, this is a good thing to do at the same time. So as always, if you guys have questions, drop them in the comments, and we will get to them live if we can. Otherwise, we'll get to them in the comments later. So apologies for missing that. So some tech specs here. So this has an aluminum foil, embossed aluminum foil. It's 10 mil thick on the front side, if you will, and that's to kind of reflect the heat away as much as possible. It's a composite glass fiber on the inside. And then on the back, obviously this is just the backing, but it has adhesive right there to stick it into place. The adhesive is good for 450 degrees Fahrenheit or 230 degrees Celsius. The material itself, I guess, is good for 1750 degrees or not quite 1,000 degrees Celsius. So if it is anywhere remotely close to that hot underneath your car, I would recommend evacuating the premises, but this will still be good. So it also comes with this heat tape to seal all of the different seams. This is fiber reinforced, high temp. This is actually good for 400 degrees direct, or basically 200 Celsius, or 2,000 degrees radiant heat. So again, if your car is that hot, on the outside of exhaust components, you have a problem. So, yeah, that's basically the spiel. It's all CNC cut, fits right in there. So let's look at the underside of the car real quick. So this stuff right here is the stock thing. So you can see it's kind of hanging down. It's actually sitting on the catalytic converter on this car. But it's formed to go underneath the tunnel right there. This is basically the same thing, except it sticks in place. So instead of relying on a few plastic fasteners where the material can just fail, for the stock stuff anyway, it's actually adhered to everything. And again, the biggest reason is that your stock stuff is okay, this is better, but your stock stuff is falling apart. This is fairly standard. These things are not quite 20 years old now, depending on what year, can be not quite 20 years old. So it's getting to be a necessary thing. So this is where it goes. This is why you want it. And you can also see kind of up here, I can get my hand on top of the transmission. I can install that stuff there. It is going to be a little awkward, and you do want to make sure that you get it properly positioned before you let it stick to anything, which is doable, but could be a little bit of a struggle. And that's why it's really better if the transmission is removed, but you don't have to have the transmission removed. So there you go. So we do have some questions. I'll make Travis wander around again. So we got some questions ahead of time. I'll go through those real quick, and then if we've got more, we will we can hit those. So is this available for the NA or the NB? It is not. That is an excellent suggestion, though, and I will be talking to our friends at DEI about putting together a kit like that. We do have a bunch of NA and B stuff, but this specific thing for the outside of the transmission tunnel is not it. I will add for NA and NB people, we do have a heat shield specifically for the exhaust. It's kind of woven fabric and hose clamps with standoffs for an air gap that that's really good for the downpipe of turbo cars. That does an excellent job, super easy to install, not very expensive, and that is for sale right now. We've actually had that for a while. Okay, I have this on my NA, and I'm concerned this will just trap water and create rust. How well is it sealed? So, how well it's sealed is kind of up to you or your installer. If you get a real kind of complete no wrinkle bond between this and the metal, then it should be pretty good. If you don't, then yeah, I can see, I mean, the adhesive is very durable. The adhesive is rated for exterior use specifically, so I don't think it's going to fall off, but I do understand your point about water getting in there. I'm going to guess it's probably not enough to make a real big difference, but if you seal it, especially if you seal the edges of it, you know, we're going to, I don't know how this goes together, but say we run tape right there to seal that seam, and then this is the end of it, maybe you seal it to the chassis as well. So if you're pretty thorough with that, and you get 15 feet of this stuff. So if you're thorough with that, then I can see it being sealed in there. So not a huge concern, but I do understand the question, and I do think in particularly rust-prone places, it's a legitimate thing to pay attention to. Okay, can this be installed correctly with the transmission still in the car? Like I said, yes, it's definitely easier with the transmission out of it, but if you're careful, you should be able to put it in with the transmission still in the car. Can it be purchased in Europe? Absolutely. We ship all over the world, and Europe is part of the world, so we can ship it to you. If your question is, can I buy it in Europe because I don't want to pay for shipping costs? I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question, but very possibly. So if you go to DEI's website, they probably have a list of distributors, and you might be able to find one in your particular country. When will this be available? Right now. So we did turn it on very recently, but it is available. We've got these guys in stock, ready to go right now. Okay, scientifically explain to me why this is better than what is already there from the factory. Again, the biggest thing is that this is intact and that is falling apart. If yours is not falling apart, then this is simply a higher quality, or kind of the basic way of putting it is that this is a higher quality version of the same concept. I don't know any of the specs for the stock stuff, but if you just look at it, that's basically a really thin layer of aluminum foil. This is actually a thin layer of aluminum as opposed to aluminum foil. Again, it's 10 mil thick. It's a little bit thicker here, but it certainly looks like a much higher quality part. And then with the adhesive here, instead of just a couple of plastic push pins, I would say it's more likely to stay in place. If yours is in good shape and you're not crazy about sound and heat and such, you're probably fine. If yours is in bad shape, which it probably is, but check, then this is an awesome option for you. If you just want the quietest, coolest cabin possible, you should probably not be driving a Miata. But that said, this should do a better job than the stock stuff. So, okay, and then we got an interesting question at the end here. It says, this is a good start, but I'm more interested in something to actually pull heat from the transmission for both manual and auto. Are you working on something like that? So, to answer the question in there, no, we are not currently working on something like that. So what it sounds like to me is that you're asking for something like the transmission cooler that we have for the ND. We don't currently have that, nor do we have any plans for the other generations, because generally speaking, transmission heat is not really a problem. So you want the fluid in the transmission to be hot enough to appropriately do its job. Obviously, you don't want it to be too hot. So you would only put a cooler on your transmission if your fluid is too hot to start off with. If your fluid is an appropriate temperature to start off with and it's just hot in the tunnel, then you don't really want to cool off that fluid, because then it could operate not well. You know, it could do long-term damage to the transmission. Maybe it's not going to shift as well, that kind of thing. So it's kind of making sure you're looking at it as an entire system, and solving all of the things. The other thing is that the exhaust is the hottest thing under there, and cooling the transmission but leaving the exhaust hot is still going to leave the cabin of the car hot. Maybe less hot, but still hot. So this is leaving everything as hot as it's supposed to be, but keeping that heat from getting into the cabin. So again, if your transmission is overheating, yes, you should look into coolers. If your transmission or your fluid, if your fluid is not overheating, I would not cool it off, and I would just try to keep that heat from getting into the cabin. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so that is all the questions I had ahead of time, and we have no questions. So there you go. Cool. Well, thank you as always for stopping by. If you like this, please give us a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, sign up for our newsletter, and if you have ideas for videos, please let us know. We're always looking for more content. So thank you as always. If you come up with questions later, drop them in the comments. We'll get to them, and we'll see you next week.